All right, welcome back to PacWest Bigfoot. This is David. If you have not and you'd like to get in and win a little something free, I like to give a little free giveaway every month that my kids choose a random name and email. You can get up there to PacWestBigfoot.com and sign on up. This month, real quick, just to kind of let you know, I'm working on a resources page on the website for both non-fiction research books and links to different blogs and websites on the continued search and collection of Bigfoot evidence. I'll be sharing a lot of my favorite places and books out there with you that I've read and I kind of learn from. And also I'll be doing a lot of non-fiction as well, so you guys can get kind of the entertainment side of Bigfoot whenever you're not out there doing your research and all of that. As a matter of fact, this month I wanted to give a shout out to a friend, JP Choquette. JP, if I mispronounce your name, I'm sorry. But it is JP Choquette, and Choquette, Choquette. Her book, Shadow in the Woods, is just awesome. Right now I'm halfway through it, and I am halfway on the edge of my seat with it. It is a great book if you like some good fiction stories about that involve Bigfoot. I suggest you get over there and grab that. Shadow in the Woods by J.P. Choquette. So with that, let's get on to our PacWest Bigfoot encounter story this week called Security Guard Has a Bigfoot Encounter Near False Klamath, California. Alright, here we go. Back in 2015, I was sent by my security company to work at a construction site in False Klamath near the Trees of Mystery attraction in Northern California. I never believed up to that point that Bigfoot existed, but they do, and I saw one while there. The sighting was brief, yes, but I got a pretty good look at one of them, and a male, by the way. I believe there was multiple Bigfoot, as I also heard and experienced a lot of weirdness over a week's period of time. Here is what happened that week that creeped me out and what I saw that had me asking to be assigned anywhere but Northern California unless it was absolutely necessary. The Bigfoot of Klamath. I am not from the area. I'm from SoCal. Redondo Beach, to be exact. I have been in the Pacific Northwest a few times, but most of my life was spent in sunny Southern California working and Baja, Mexico surfing. My idea of fun is not gallivanting in the woods like some. I prefer surfing. But my work has taken me a few times to the northern part of the state of California. I am still a security guard today. After getting out of the military and opting not to head to college, I instead got a good job as a security guard to a friend's dad. Other than that, as I said, I do not do a lot of wandering around the woods. Most of my time is spent on a beach or just off of it surfing. And I'll tell you this, after what I saw and experienced, I only venture into the woods if I have to due to work today. And personally, I've asked not to be sent there anymore, if possible. So here's what I noticed and experienced in the middle of the woods in Northern California not even 3 years ago. Crazy sounds in the night. So the first day I arrived, I had to get some sleep, as I was scheduled to work that night. I was there to guard some big equipment that was going to be used for the latest phase of some road work that was being done. I would be there for a whole week, Sunday to Sunday. The crazy and strange stuff started that first night, and personally I think some Bigfoot, were there already messing with stuff, or at least passing by nightly down to the river and back up into the forest. I did get a chance to talk to a guy from the Crescent City area once who had an experience not long after this. And one person on the crew herself swears she made out some large foot impressions near the gravel piles, but she could not be sure. But back to the craziness or weirdness of that first night. As I said, I live in the heart of the beaches in Los Angeles, and I hear crazy stuff at night sometimes, but nothing like this ever. This was creepy, weird, and an Iraq veteran like myself who saw some action was feeling very uneasy. I showed up the first night ready, awake, and willing to take care of and watch over their goods. It would be a long night, that's for sure. After the foreman of the site left, I headed over to the small trailer and signed in, grabbed the emergency number files, and sat them on the table next to the kitchen sink. I turned on the television. Yes, it had one, and I started watching some late night comedy thing that was not all that funny after all. I heard nothing until later in the evening when I had to take a pee break in the porta potty about 20 yards to the south from the so-called office/trailer. Of course, a car or two here and there would be heard on and off all week, as it is the main highway 101 they were working on. But at night, the highway is usually a lot quieter than the day, and that is why hearing much of anything was odd, especially when you hear people. I was relieving myself when I thought I heard gibberish or low mumbling from not far away. I figured I was about to earn my keep in a second. I stepped out of the porta potty, and it stopped almost immediately. But I knew what I heard, and I knew, or at least had a feeling, whoever it was still nearby. I was correct. I shut the porta potty door slowly, and that is when I heard some pretty heavy footsteps move off from the right and head off uphill and across the main highway. I figured it was probably just a vagrant passing by, possibly wanting to see if anyone was around and maybe break into the office and grab some food or something. That is a pretty common thing to happen on sites like these. I took a look around and headed back to the office after seeing nothing. Later that night, early morning, I would say about 3 a.m. would be my best guess looking back, I decided to do a walkthrough again. I would do 3 each night. This time I took out half a sandwich with me, just in case the person earlier was hungry, and I happened to find him. I did not. But I believe he or they were nearby as I started hearing whistling off in the distance. I left the sandwich on top of a large container near the porta potty. Back and forth it came from down the hillside to the river and back again up the hillside across the road. Even during the third walk through, I heard it. They were pretty far off, but I could make out whistles. Yes, it was all pretty strange, I admit, but I was not thinking Bigfoot or anything else at the time. I had no reason to until the third day on the job. And yes, the sandwich was gone. What in the world was that? The second night was so uneventful I remember I fell asleep for an hour and a half. But the third night would start my mind to wondering what is in the woods of the Pacific Northwest, and how do I ever avoid coming back? No, I do not think these things were these were killers looking to eat me, but good Lord, they are monstrous, scary sounding, and visually frightening to look at. That is why I would not want to be there again. I do not want to be any closer than I was that night with these things ever. And if that means not venturing out into the forests up north, I am good with that. Personally, I'll take my luck with a shark in the water. Without a reference in your mind for what you are hearing and seeing when it comes to Bigfoot, you truly get a sense of what real fear and wonder can feel like all at once when you do. The third night, I would see something, and the fifth night, I would get an even better visual, but it started with a sandwich. The moment I started my shift or showed up, the foreman of the site was letting me know that he never noticed anything out of the ordinary when walking around back and forth on the site. I told him what I experienced after he saw my log one morning and asked. He mentioned that some of his crew who lived in the area have seen or known for a fact that Bigfoot roamed the area. We both laughed it off, of course. The foreman himself, I would learn, was born and raised and still lived in the San Diego area, so he was as skeptical as I was, and a former beach bum, too. That evening, when all was quiet, but the occasional car, semi-truck moving through the bends slowly, I started my first walkthrough for the night. I stopped by the porta potty once again, and not a second later, the talking was back. I zipped up and stepped out as fast as I could. The talking stopped immediately again. I stood there and turned on my flashlight and looked around. Nothing was out of place. However, I noticed something in the light when moving the beam near a pile of gravel that was backed by the tree line that led down to the river. A plume of mist was constantly coming from the side of a tree not 30 yards from me. I yelled out the typical, "Who's there?" and got no response. I moved towards the tree itself as I was sure that was someone's breath creating the plume of mist in the cold night air. At that moment, I heard the craziest thing and scariest thing I'd ever heard in my life. And trust me, I've heard tanks go off in the desert not 50 feet away from me. It was a scream that had my bones vibrating out of my skin. I shuddered and shook a bit, literally. And just as I moved the beam of my flashlight back at the tree, that is when I saw a massive blur of black move off faster than Todd Gurley through a defensive line. And I have to say, this thing seemed much larger than Todd and anyone on that offensive Rams line, for that matter. It was massive. It seemed to almost fill up the space between two large trees, and poof, it was gone. I heard someone running downhill, crashing through the forest. If that was a person, I thought, they were going to injure or kill themselves running that fast down the hill in the dark. But I knew in my gut that was no person, not even close. Last but not least, I was a little apprehensive about going back to work that night, the fifth night. For some reason, my gut was telling me to head home. But how often does a guy listen to his gut? Right, ladies? But I am a man of my word, and I love my job. I did talk a bit with one of the guys on the site, a young guy by the name of Rob, if I remember correctly. He talked a lot about Bigfoot, what they are, their presence around the area, and how he thinks they are, well, nice folks. A little weird if you ask me calling them folks, but to each his own. Rob was a true believer with accounts and stories of his own, for sure. The fifth night started off quietly. The evening before, there were no visitors I know of, but the whistles and even some screaming way off in the distance could be heard. Every night since the third night I carried a taser and a much larger flashlight after that. It was quiet, like I said, not a sound except for the crickets and the occasional passerby on the highway, which, by the way, I had come to find lots of road crossings of these things reported in the area over time. But seeing how there was a river below and mountains above, maybe they were making their way back and forth to their food source, and the site was simply in their way at that point, I thought. I headed out, however cautiously, on my second walkthrough around midnight. I walked around some of the larger equipment that was finally going to be leaving the next day, and I would be there 2 more nights, even after this event that had me seriously freaked out. I walked around a roller and a large loader when I heard a car slam its brakes on and then take off real fast. I did not see the car, I just heard what I heard. Not seconds later, I heard someone or something walk or run really fast down the hillside, cross the road, and stop near the part of the large lot cleared out for gravel that was all but gone, and where the equipment sat at the time. I flashed my light in the direction of the footsteps, and that is when I saw a large, 2-legged creature staring at me. It stood there no longer than a second or two, but it was long enough to see that Rob was telling me the truth. Bigfoot is real, and really big too. It was massive, like a bodybuilder, some of my friends in the military, buff I guess you could say. It was almost a perfect V shape of a thing with what seemed long, shaggy, almost dread-like hair. The color was almost, likely black or dark reddish brown, I think. It was pretty dark outside at the time. Hard to tell. It seemed twice as tall as me, and I'm 5'9". It was at least 9 feet tall for sure, no doubt about that. Its neck was non-existent, and its arms were huge, muscular. As quickly as I could, I looked at the face, and yes, I believe it was more monkey-like than human. However, the rest of the body seemed very human, and you can sense it was a male. I did not see any proof of that, really. It just seemed male for some reason. I was scared. My heart rate was fast, but for some reason I did not feel threatened as in this thing might attack me at any moment. It just turned and walked off faster than I could move my flashlight to keep up with it. I remember the hair. It was all hair except a bit around the cheeks and nose. I could not make out a skin tone, but the hair seemed reddish or darker brown perhaps, maybe black. Its arms were massive and long, much like what I heard Rob describe beforehand. The face was frightening, but looked much like a sad monkey-like face, like it was droopy or something. Not sure if you understand me, but suffice it to say, it was scary looking for sure. I was pretty freaked out, though, after the encounter, and I decided to forget the last walkthrough that night. However, I did leave half a sandwich on the barrel that was about 10 feet from the office. The next morning, it was gone. Again. Bye-bye, Bigfoot. Looking back, I think gifting was taking place. But at the same time, my gut told me that these things were wild animals and to give them space. I have not since worked up north. Personally, I'm not much for Bigfoot. I am not actively researching or reading books about them anymore either. I just want to surf and take my chances with a bunch of people in a city than out in the woods with that massive thing. So, that is my story of Bigfoot in Northern California. And no, I seriously do not wish to see another one again. Ever. Thanks, Leland.